Hi everyone, welcome to this lecture on Introduction to Virtual Cloud Network. My name is Rohit Rahi and I'm part of the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure team. So what is a virtual cloud network? Virtual cloud network, OCI virtual cloud network, is a private network that you set up in Oracle data centers with firewall rules and specific type of communication gateways that you can choose to use. A VCN covers a single contiguous IPv4 CIDR block of your choice. In the previous lecture series, lecture module, we looked into CIDR and how you can use CIDR notation. So if you have not watched that video, please go back and take a look. But your VCN covers this single contiguous IPv4 block, CIDR block. Today we just support IPv4 and not IPv6. A VCN resides within a single region. So how does this work? We'll look into more details, but first look into what does a VCN, how is a VCN represented? So a VCN is simply represented by a CIDR range here. And the guidance here says, you should use ranges which don't overlap with your on-premises or other networks you are using. So first things first here, this is the CIDR notation we looked into the previous lecture. This is what is called RFC 1918 ranges. So our recommendation is to use private IP address ranges specified in RFC 1918. Now what is this RFC 1918 mean? RFC 1918 was used to create the standards by which networking equipment assigns IP addresses in a private network. So these are for private internets. Now RFC 1918 reserves the following range of IP addresses that cannot be routed on the internet. So the first one is this 8/8 prefix. The second one is 172.16/12, and the third range is 192.168/16. Now we looked into this in the previous module. So this one goes all the way from .16.0.0 all the way to .16 to .31.255.255. We looked into these in the previous module. This one goes all the way from 192.168.0.0 all the way to 168.255.255, and of course the first one 10.0.0.0/8 goes all the way from 10.0.0.0 all the way to 10.255.255.255. Now one thing to keep in mind is that again, these are not addressable on the public internet. You can assign these ranges within a private network. Each address is unique within that network, but not outside of it. Now, one thing to keep in mind, because this comes up a lot of time, is OCI within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure VCN. The size we support is /16 to /30. So even though we say, use these recommended RFC 1918 ranges, we don't support a /88 range, for example, right? So we only support, this will come up in the exam also, /16 to /30. And remember, as your number becomes, subnet mask becomes bigger, your networks become smaller. Now, why don't we go all the way to /31, for example, right? And the next bullet actually explains that. In the VCN, the first two IP addresses and the last one are reserved. In a typical network, the first and the last are reserved, right? The first is network, the last is broadcast. In case of VCN, 3 IP addresses are reserved. So that is the reason we stop at /30 networks and we don't get into networks which are smaller than that. So remember, again, this is an exam question. The 3 IP addresses are reserved for in a OCI VCN. Now let's look into this a little bit more detail. So first thing is, you see this Oracle Cloud region here, right? In a typical regions, we had the previous, the first regions we launched, we started with 3 availability domains. So you have AD1 here, you have AD2, and you have AD3, right? So we always had 3 availability domain. Now what it's showing here is in a region, irrespective whether it has 3 ADs or 1 AD, the VCN is a regional service, right? So and how you create a VCN, you just simply specify a CIDR range. Recommendation is to use RFC 19. So this one is an RFC 19 range 10.0.0.0/16. You specify this VCN. As you can see, it's a regional thing, right? It spans across the ADs. Now we looked into this in the CIDR notation module. You take a network and then you subdivide into subnetworks, right? So you have this concept of a network, then you have a subnetwork, and then you have host, right? We looked into this in the previous module. So similarly, you take a VCN and you divide this into subnets. Now each subnet you create can either be an AD specific or regional. Now what do I mean by that? AD specific basically means your subnet is contained within the AD. So you see subnet A, subnet B, and subnet C all are part of their respective availability domains. They cannot span those respective ADs. Now, if, like I said, multi-AD region, you have to, if you create a AD specific subnet, they are contained within that AD. Now there's also concept of a regional subnet. This is something which is relatively newer, was launched a few months back, where your subnets, if you create a regional subnet, spans all the 3 ADs in a multi-AD region. So as you can see here, this particular subnet D, spans all the 3 ADs here. Whether it's a regional or a AD specific subnet, each subnet has a contiguous range of IPs in IPv4 as in a VCN described in a CIDR notation. An important thing to keep in mind is the subnet IP ranges cannot overlap. So within a network, if you create subnets, just keep in mind that they cannot overlap. It seems very logical. Now, why do we create subnets in the first place, right? If you ask, instances are placed in subnets. So you can see an instance here, 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 right? And the instances draw their internal IP address and the network configuration from the subnet where they belong. Now, because of that, you can have two different characteristics in a subnet. The first is you could designate your subnets as private. What that means is instances contain private IP address and no public IP addresses. These can be your databases, or for security or other reasons, you might choose to just use private subnets. The second class of subnets are public subnets, which contain both private and public IP addresses. And there is this concept we are talking about, virtual network interface cards, VNICs. VNIC is a component that enables a compute instance to connect to a VCN. The VNIC determines how the instance connect with endpoints inside and outside the VCN, specifically if the VNIC has only a private IP address or also has a public and a private IP address. So literally these instances here have a network card here, and this network card is really important because it determines how the instances communicate both within the subnet, within the VCN and subnet and the VCN, and all outside the VCN as well. Now with this, let's quickly jump into the console and show you a quick demo of how you create a VCN within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So I'm here logged into my OCI console, and if you click on this sandwich or burger menu icon on the left hand side, you can see different tabs, and you can see the networking tab right here, right? And within networking, the first the first link is Virtual Cloud Networks, VCN, and there are whole sets of things here: dynamic routing gateways, IPsec, load balancer, fast connect, public IPs, and so on and so forth, right? And we'll discuss each of them in subsequent modules. So if I click on Virtual Cloud Network, first thing you need to notice here, which we discussed in our identity and access management module, is the compartments. Now, compartments are logical locations where you can create your resources. So you need to decide where you are going to create your virtual cloud network. I have been using training compartment for all my training demos. So we'll use that. So you can see the compartment here. And then there's a button here which says create virtual cloud network. So first thing I can do here is I'm in US East Ashburn region. So I can use this kind of a naming convention. And I can say this is my first VCN. in US East, right? And there are two options here. One says create virtual cloud network only, and the second one says create a virtual cloud network plus all the resources. So because I don't know much, let me just choose this, and you can see here it's doing bunch of things for me, right? And I'll just click on that, and I'll click on create here, and within couple of seconds, second or less, you can see my virtual cloud network is created, and you can see this is in US East, and this is my first VCN. Now within this VCN, couple of things to notice. First is this is the CIDR block, right? Pretty straightforward. It chose one for me. I didn't provide that. Next example will actually do it ourselves, and it created 3 subnets here. Now US East has 3 availability domains, so you can see that there is a subnet for each of the availability domains. So 83 has a subnet, 82 has a subnet, and 81 has a subnet, right? Everything is available, and you see that it also chose CIDR blocks for subnets, right? So 10.0.0/24, 10.0.1.0/24, 10.0.2.0/24, right? So took that big network here and subdivided into smaller networks. Great, pretty straightforward. Now there are a bunch of things within a virtual cloud network: route tables, gateways, security list, different kinds of gateways, network security groups, etc., etc. We'll discuss all these in subsequent modules. So for now, let's we'll skip that, right? So second thing I want to show here is this was pretty straightforward, right? Think about this as a default network. I really don't care about my IP addresses. I just want something quick and easy. So I chose that option. If I didn't want that, right, I could come here and I could say this is my or let's call this production VCN in US East. Its compartment is training. I want to create a virtual cloud network only, right? I really don't want to go and create all the all the subnets and all that, right? Because I want to control what kind of subnets and what kind of routing, the CIDR notations I can use. So I chose 192.168.1.0/24. This is the one we were using for our in our slides earlier. You can see things like DNS label. I can apply tags here, if you remember from the identity access management module, and I can create my network here. Now it's really straightforward. I got my network here, right? But there is no subnets here, right? You can see here no subnets, none of the other things got created, right? So I can do that one by one. So first thing I want to do is I want to create my my subnets, right? So I would say this is still US East, and this is my public subnet. So I say public, or actually I can remove subnet here, just say public, that's fine. And now I can choose between regional and availability domain specific subnet, right? I could do that. I can choose regional, that's fine. Doesn't matter. This region has multiple ADs, so I could have chosen an AD specific subnet as well, right? And if you guys remember, these are from the previous module, these are the CIDR ranges we were using, right? So 192.168.1.0/24, I broke it down into a smaller network, right? You can see here 1.0 goes all the way to 1.31, right? Now it's asking me for some other specific things, right? It's a route table. I'll just choose a default route table, and now it's saying is it public or private? So I would say it's a public subnet. I could have chosen private here as well, right? Because it's public, I'm going to use public. And then it says choose a security list, right? And both route tables, security list, we can change later on. We'll talk about that in the subsequent modules. Let me just go ahead and create a private network, private subnet as well. So I say private, regional is fine. I need to choose another CIDR here. So remember from the previous module, we took a big network, we divided it into specific subnetworks. So in the first CIDR, I was using 1.0/27. This one is 1.32/27. I could use 1.64, 1.92, so on and so forth, right? So I chose that network. I am using the same route table, but in reality you would be using a different route table because it's a private subnet, and I would choose a private subnet. and here I can choose the same security list, but these again I can change subsequently. And now I create a subnet. So very simply, I created two subnets, private and public, and I created a network, created two subnets. In the next module, we'll talk a little bit about public and private IP addresses, and then we'll spin up an instance in both the subnets, and we'll get into a little bit more details on how things work. Thanks for joining this lecture. If you have some time, join the next lecture where we talk about IP addressing within OCI VCN service. Thank you.